What's up guys, I'm Mel here back in the studio, and today I'm super excited to share with you my project of, how do I explain this? It's my remake of a Brooks remix of David Guetta and Bebe Rhexa's I'm Good.
What?
That might not make sense, but I think you guys know what track this is. This is a Brooks remix that actually never got released. I think David Guetta played it like probably 5 years ago, a couple different times. And actually, I just heard it in concerts at ADE. Brooks played this version when he was doing a live set. So it's a super sick version. I think eventually Brooks is actually going to release this drop as an original track, but he's still playing it at live shows and stuff like that. So without further ado, let's jump in and I'll show you how I made the track. So normally I start with my leads, but in this case, how he's built the song is the chords start and then the leads actually come in later. So I'm just going to show you exactly how, kind of in the order that I created the song. So first, let's look at these drop chords. So for me, this was the most important element of the song. I had actually started working on this remake, and for a long time I just wasn't super motivated to be working on it because it just sounded kind of shitty. These chords, like I said, are the main element and really give the full sound of the track and make it what it is. And I just was, I'd chosen some pretty shitty presets and it just wasn't working the way I wanted it to. So eventually I came back in here and went back through and kind of tweaked all the presets and made some of my own so they sounded exactly how I wanted to. And I was able to come up with 4 different layers that really worked well together and I was really happy with. All these layers are made in Silent 1. This is the first one. It sounds like this. Pretty basic kind of preset. Just have saw chords here, 8 voices over here, 4 voices, and nothing in the second oscillator. A little bit of decay, a little bit of release, some EQ and chorus, which just changes it a tiny bit. And one of the really interesting things that kind of makes this sound the way it is it has this mod envelope down here. It has this pitch. So if I play it again, hopefully you can hear it kind of like pitches up every time the sound plays and just sucks you in a bit. So yeah, I think that's a super cool preset. Here's the second one. This is actually a preset that was in my sound bank and I use it in a lot of my tracks. It's a big saw, has a lot of white noise, kind of detuned. It just fills out a lot of the frequencies really well. But I ended up tweaking it a bit to fit this particular track. I tweaked the ADSR and stuff like that. And I kind of, hopefully you can see maybe here or on the second oscillator, I've kind of moved it in so it's not such a wide sound. It's some of the saw voices are more in mono. Here's the third preset. This is a super basic sound. It's just very like kind of in it-ish sounding. 5 voices of saw here with almost no detune. That's why it gives it that really kind of just in it sort of preset. A tiny bit of white noise, but it's really not doing much. And yeah, that's kind of it. And finally, here's the last preset. It sounds like this. This preset was the very last one I created, and I was pretty happy with those 3 before. I just felt like to fill out the chords, it needed a higher octave because all the other ones were on that lower octave. So this one is a pretty detuned saw. It has some voices of unison in the center. And then over here, this is the one that is actually up an octave and is fairly detuned. So it gives it that higher octave and just kind of fills out the frequencies with that detuned sound. For processing, I have first an EQ, literally just chopping out the low end. There's like a tiny bit of corrective EQ up here, but really super minimal. Down below it, I have stereo enhancer. Again, it's literally just on like the slightest amount. It's hardly doing anything. Below that I have peak control and reverb. This is just giving the chords a little bit of reverb. Pretty balanced. I don't know if I'm even using that, maybe just to cut out the volume occasionally. And sausage fattener just to kind of fatten up the chords. I think I have it turned up where it's almost distorting it a little bit, but just kind of giving that nice grit to the sound. So after the chords, we have the next most important thing, which is the basses. They sound like this. Now, I'm actually not going to go over too much detail on the basses because I've gotten in a bad habit where almost every track, my basses aren't exactly the same, but pretty much for my basses, I literally just grab my sound bank and I have so many different presets in there that I can just go through and add them all up, and usually they sound pretty good together. So I can just show you a couple here. Yeah, I'll just solo a few, but pretty much it's just like 10 different layers that I just added in Silent 1 and Serum and just added them all up until I got a sound that I liked. So those are a couple Silent 1 versions, and then I have a couple in Serum. And then one of the interesting things that I did is normally I actually just layer a lot of one-shots like in the project, in the playlist. But what I've actually done is I've layered some one-shots in the sampler. So they just play in the same pattern. So this is a one-shot that I exported from BIOTT, Blame It on the Timing. It sounds like this. Just like super growly. I think you might have a little bit more control if you put it in the playlist and tweak each note exactly, but this is a super easy way. If you just want to be lazy, you can just grab a one shot and put it in here. I put it on transient because I just like the way it sounded, but probably the best way is to put it on stretch. That way for every note, it's going to play the exact same length. But yeah, I did that for that. And then I have like 2 more one shots. Similar one shot, honestly. And then this one. So all those basses go to here. I actually have them separated out. The synthesizers are going to this one called bass, and then the one shots are going to this one called growl. So I'll just mute this, go over processing. Here I have some EQ, just a little bit of corrective EQ, a little bit of OTT, just pushing everything together, some camel crusher, distortion, compression, and yeah, sausage fattener, just making it fat. For the growls, as I've called them, or the one shots that you just saw, again, just chopping out the low end. Pretty much, I don't need to EQ hardly any of it because they've already been very processed in the other projects. They're just one shots that I've exported, so they already sound really good. And then again, sausage fattener just to brick wall limit. This is actually one thing that maybe I haven't mentioned before, but oftentimes I like using sausage fattener. If you guys don't know, first of all, it makes the sound really fat and aggressive if you turn up the dial. But even just having sausage fattener on, even if it's not, like if you turn this down to 0%, it's still going to like brick wall limit. So if you want to just like squash your sound and make it so that there's no like peaks going over a certain level, sometimes I'll just throw sausage fattener on it and it just chops it off. So below that, I actually have a couple additional samples, just like little kind of horn things and growls, just to add a tiny bit more excitement. I tried to get it as close as I could to the original track. I think it's close enough. It's not perfect, but yeah, I was pretty happy with that, and it just kind of adds up. Like this section right here I can play without this first. So this is just the basses. Sounds pretty basic, just straightforward. And then if I add these growls, it really starts to come to life. Yeah, just adds a lot more character. And then obviously, as always, I have a sub bass down here with a couple pitch bends. It's pretty basic, sounds like this. Okay, so we've covered chords and basses. Now the next step was to create the leads. This is one of the parts that I also had quite a lot of trouble with. For a long time I had layered some leads and they sounded okay, but they just didn't, yeah, they weren't quite hitting like I wanted them to. So I ended up going in, scrapping all of the original leads and kind of creating my own and layering up some new ones. Alone, they sound like this. So first, I'll show you these presets. Pretty much they're all made in Silent 1. This one like this. This is sort of the main one. This is actually, again, a preset from my sound bank that I've taken. It was a good start, and then I just tweaked a couple things to make it fit the track better. Here's the second one. Exact same thing, just a preset that I had, and then I tweaked it. I think it's the exact same thing for here. I've renamed them, but yeah, these were originally from my sound bank. And this is actually the only preset that I just made completely from scratch. I was really happy with those first 3 leads, and then I just felt like I wanted like a big, wide, like super saw detuned just to kind of fill out, make it like smooth out the sound of the leads. And then below that, just to add like a little bit more punch and kind of an octave layer, I've added these plucks. It sounds like this. That's the first one. Second one is here. Both of those presets are actually, again, from my sound bank. They are the leads that I created for Byte. So I just layered those and they ended up working really well to add that second layer, the second octave, and just make the leads sound even more sick. So again, I've separated these leads out a little bit. I have the main leads and then I have the plucks. So those are processed a little bit differently. For the main leads, I have some EQ, which is a really weird EQ. What I did here is I just lowered the volume of the sound because I had already adjusted the volumes of each individual preset. And then I just wanted to lower the volume of the sound so it hit into the distortion in a certain way, otherwise it was just way too distorted. So down below here I have some blood overdrive, some stereo enhancer to actually make the leads narrower, because the chords were already super wide, so I didn't want them clashing. Down here I have a little bit of hyperdimension, which widens up the sound. So I just kind of counteracted what I just did before, which is narrowing it, and then I widen it again, but it sort of makes it sound a little bit different. Below there I have some reverb, which is ducking down with the peak controller. I actually have Camel Crusher after the reverb, so that's not only affecting the sound of the leads, but also the reverb, so it just makes everything compressed together. And finally, I have a little bit of corrective EQ, just adding a little bit of that high end back. For the plucks, I think it's very similar actually. I think I've literally just copied over all the settings from here, and then so like up here you can see it's all the same. And then down here, I think the only thing I changed is I added some OTT. And the reason I added that is to make the reverb tail. You can see I have it after the reverb. And so that way the OTT really extends the reverb tail and makes those plucks like super plucky. I'll show it. So here it is if I turn the OTT off. Versus if I turn it on. Hopefully you can hear, yeah, especially when I stop playing it, kind of ducks down the main sound, but then the reverb tail is a lot longer, and yeah, it just makes it, the reverb extends quite a bit. Alright, so for just a second, now that we've gone over the instruments, I'm going to mute the drums and play just the instrumental track. I'll start it from like right here. Okay, so for drums, again, I'm not going to spend too much time on them. They're really straightforward. I just have a kick and clap here. And then here, I have my regular offbeat claps. Down below here, I have some rides and some like hi-hats and stuff. And then under that, I have just different effects, downlifters, some crowd noise. Just to fill out the frequencies and give it that last little bit of energy. So that's going to be the full track, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you like this track as much as I do. I think a lot of you have been waiting for this track. I actually started making this track from some requests from some guys on Instagram that really wanted me to make this. So thank you for the suggestion. As always, if you want to download the FLP for this track, it's going to be available down in the description below for just a few dollars. And yeah, super straightforward. Just download the FLP. You can check out all the sounds, the samples, how I'm mixing everything, and all that stuff. As always, if I miss anything, feel free to drop me a comment down in the description, or not the description, in the comment section rather. And I think that should be it. So without further ado, I'm gonna shut up, let you guys listen to the full playthrough of the track one last time, and enjoy, guys.
I'm good.